Welcome back to Steeler Thoughts and Chief Feelings, episode 12. I am your co-host, Chris Dorst. I'm the philosopher. I don't know if I should call myself a philosopher. I'm the philosophy professor in the group.
And I'm your other co-host, Ajay Nair. I am the Chiefs fan and the psychiatrist in this group. Before we start, just thanks for everybody that followed along, either on YouTube, either through whatever podcasting app you use, or on Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter, all at STCF715. Really, we should get into, because we had some topics that got a lot more engagement and commentary than we're used to. Apparently, so Lonnie and I had a little bit of discussion about the University of Michigan, and I guess the fans of the University of Michigan, and especially the fans of Jim Harbaugh, have a lot to say when they perceive any criticism coming their way. So the first video that I wanted to read some comments on, Lonnie we put up a video with Lonnie talking about Roman Wilson and what he thought about Roman Wilson while he was at Michigan. Essentially, the theme of the video was that he was a little surprised that Roman Wilson was this highly regarded, because as an Ohio State fan, he was never that scared of him. And so the comments we got on that video included cringe-ass bias, nice, and STFU, dude was a projected second-round pick who torched OSU last year, and I'm an OSU fan. I always love the, I'm going to criticize this and say that I'm a fan of that team. I feel like 95% of the time I don't believe that people are actually a fan of that team. It's just a nice way to try to introduce some semblance of credibility online. I enjoyed that one. And then we put up a video where, the point of the overall, it was part of a larger conversation where we were discussing how we thought Jim Harbaugh will do with the Chargers. And I think Lonnie and I kind of landed on the idea that we thought he would do pretty well, but that his tenure would be really short-lived. And so I posted a short that was the part of me talking about why I thought his tenure would be short-lived. And so I wonder if it was interpreted by a lot of people as me just saying he was going to be a bad NFL coach, because I was just talking about why coaching NFL players are different. Anyway, here are the comments we got on those. Acting like Jim didn't have a crazy good run in the NFL once already. The next one, I particularly like this one. Damn, if only the Chargers had hired a coach with an NFL experience and a Super Bowl experience. That was funny. Next, did you completely forget he's already been a successful NFL head coach? The next one, what are you going on talking like he hasn't already gone to the Super Bowl? The next one, he's coached in the NFL for years. He's been to the NFC Championship game 3 times and went to the Super Bowl one of those years. This one's another good one. This may be my favorite. If you do a simple Google search, you won't sound like you were born yesterday. He's a leader of men. Yes.
That's what comes up when you do a Google search. Leader of men.
Really? Yeah.
No, I mean, that would be nice.
That would be really funny. Then the next one is, I feel like, a typical football argument all the time. Have you coached in the NFL? What a terrible statement. Keep trying, though. I like the encouragement at the end. I appreciate that. So, I thought that most of them were... My thought was that most people may not have understood that I was not saying he was going to be a bad coach. I didn't think he was going to last very long. But then this last comment clearly did understand that, and they still thought I was stupid. Once again, you just displayed that you do not follow players that Harbaugh has coached. Most of the SF players that are asked about him and his quirkiness, a decade since he has left, have the same response, which goes like this. I would run through a wall for that man. Does that sound like an NFL player that's tired of the coach? Balky, referring to Trent Balky, the GM of San Francisco at the time, Balky started all this BS narrative that you hear because it's the only thing he could sell to the fan base in SF that would A, keep his job, B, keep the fans from lynching him for firing a successful, well-liked coach. Horrible take. So I guess even those that understood what I was trying to say thought it was a terrible take.
Well, that's what gets engagement. Gotta make people mad.
And then finally, we had one video of Lonnie actually saying nice things about Harbaugh. Like that was the part of the video where Lonnie was saying that he thought he was going to be a good coach, even though he hated him. Um, so the one comment was because Lonnie, like many avid Ohio State fans, refers to he won't say the name Michigan. He refers to them as the team up north. So
Except he
one
said it
comment
once.
he did,
Yeah,
and he will have to repent.
yeah.
Uh,
Hopefully he
the
has.
first comment was just say Michigan, lol. And then the next comment, which is my overall favorite comment of all of them, uh, for this to make sense, do you know who Woody Hayes is or was?
It's a familiar name, but no, I don't think so.
He's this like old legendary Ohio State coach who coached between the 50s and 70s and very famous. He won like 5 national titles. Like he's actually the person that started this whole the team up north thing. But famously, his last ever game he coached, I believe, it was the Gator Bowl against Clemson, and Ohio State lost because they threw an interception when they were in field goal range to take the lead. And the guy who intercepted the pass got tackled on the sideline right in front of Woody Hayes. And as he got up, Woody Hayes punched him in the face, and that effectively ended his career. Anyway, this comment was dude wants to be Woody Hayes so bad he's gonna punch a kid in the face after this interview. Which, so,
Oh, that's good. I hope Lonnie appreciates that.
anyway, Lonnie was like, I was going over the comments with him, and he was like, "Wow, like you guys, that's a lot that you guys put these things out every week, and you just get completely trashed like this. Like you keep going." And I was like, "Oh no, this isn't typical. This is Harbaugh fans."
Though it is nice. I feel like this, like I appreciate the. You got to take this all with the right attitude, right? You don't take it personally, but if you please keep trashing us, we will take it. We
Yeah,
enjoy being trashed.
especially I love the funny ones. Like I
Yeah,
always say, you know, it's always you can be mean if you're funny. If you're funny enough, you can be as mean as you want. I feel like it's still entertaining. So, yeah, we definitely appreciate the engagement and hope that we will continue to get. You know, if Harbaugh lasts for 10 years, I would be happy to hear about it. If we're somehow still doing this in 10 years.
yeah. Please save your receipts.
All right. Well,
Yeah. So where are we?
I
Um,
think it's time for starting with the Steelers. Um,
okay. I was just making sure I had nothing else to follow up on from last week.
oh,
I don't think I do. I maybe organically some things will come up,
okay.
but yeah, let's get into the Steelers, I guess.
Um, I guess this first one can be as long or short as you want it to be, depending on your opinions. But after the Steelers declined Najee Harris's 5th-year option, do you feel like there's any chance he's on the team next year?
Um, I do think it's a bit surprising that we declined it without drafting a running back. Um, I don't. I mean, maybe there's a lot of faith in Jalen Warren. I'm not sure that I have that faith, uh, but I do feel. I mean, like, yeah, Harris has never been like I think the kind of runner that you think is just dominating a game. But he's always sort of kind of done what we asked him to do without complaining and being a leader in the locker room at a really young age. It feels kind of like a mistake for those reasons not to extend him. Um, and that's me being ignorant of all the other considerations that are at play here and whatnot. But I kind of would have thought that just valuing him for his sort of team first approach and being a leader in that locker room would result in picking up that option. But apparently not. I guess I still kind of hope that we will sign him to a longer term deal. I don't think it's likely. Um, and I say that also thinking that he's not the best running back. uh, I like him and I think he's a good presence in the locker room mainly. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, um, I do think we'll have to be in the market for running back if we don't resign him. Because I don't think, I mean, my view of Jalen Warren is that he's a good sort of complement back, a good change of pace back. But I sort of struggle to see how he would be the full time answer there. But I don't know. We'll see.
Do you think that it was that they didn't want him back, or was the price tag of the fifth-year option just too much? Or was it like a production value thing, or was it that they're ready to move on?
It might have been. It wasn't even that high. It was like 6.7 or something like that million. So uh, for the amount of carries he gets, I don't think it was that bad. But um, yeah, it's a little perplexing to me, given that we also don't have another outside wide receiver. It seems like we're going to be running focused for at least this year. And I guess he'll be around for this year. But then, like, are we playing to just overhaul the offense again next offseason? I don't know. So I mean, yeah, you would have thought I would have thought that we would extend it or pick up the option, but they didn't. So they're thinking something that I'm not thinking, which I guess is mysterious and interesting.
I wonder because it is kind of an odd spot to be like. So the Chiefs just did this with Clyde Edwards-Helaire last year, but Clyde his production was so low that we actually did end up re-signing him this year just on a vet minimum deal. But that doesn't seem Najee Harris, I think, has gotten 1,000 yards every year he's been in the league, right?
Yeah, he has, but not like well, yeah,
Significant.
never like our super high yards per carry, right? And it's hard to blame him sometimes. Like the offensive line has not been it's usually improved as the season goes on. But he's had a lot. I don't know how many times I've seen him get the ball and have to like avoid a tackler or two in the backfield before getting to the line of scrimmage. But on the other hand, there's also been many times where there's like a hole and he does not take it. He runs into a wall instead. And so those are, you know,
It's
not great.
strategically an interesting choice. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's you wonder how much how much it gets in his head having to dance out of the backfield so much, uh, where like maybe you stop trusting yourself when you see a hole or something like that. Um, but yeah, I mean um, he's had a lot of yards. That's right.
So if this is his last year, what would your kind of summative analysis been on his tenure in Pittsburgh?
Um, I I gotta think we expected more drafting him in the first round, um, but like more playmaking ability. I don't think of him as like a big playmaker. I think of him as sort of a reliable, like he'll take a bunch of carries and get a bunch of yards and probably play through injuries and whatnot. So in those respects, like yeah, he's done it. He's done he's done a lot for us, but he hasn't really been a huge playmaker for us.
Yeah, because I thought when he was in Alabama, he had a reputation of being more dynamic. Well, same thing can be said for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, actually, at LSU.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it did seem like a lot of people thought it was a weird pick to pick a running back in the first round when we picked him. And I think you would have hoped that if we were going to do that, that you do get some dynamic playmaking out of it. And this does make it seem like that might have been, you know, not the greatest pick. I still like the guy.
Um, all right. My next question. Now that we've had the draft and teams are essentially set now, there'll be like some tweaks here and there, and maybe a surprise blockbuster trade. But in general, teams are pretty set. So with the Steelers roster as it is right now, if you assume that like every player has a certain percentage, certain probability of being successful, uh, and we leave everybody at their current level of probability of being successful, but you can take one person on the team let's remove the quarterback position because I feel like that ends up being too easy of a selection. But you take one person and you let them play at a first team All Pro level, guaranteed. What person on the Steelers would you pick this year?
Mm,
Well, and one of the reasons I'm taking out quarterback is when I thought about this for myself, I think even with Mahomes as good as he is, I think I'd still pick Mahomes. So I was like, it's too obviously quarterback.
that's a good question. Um, I feel like I feel like ooh, well, there's realistic and unrealistic choices here, right?
You can be as
Does that
unrealistic
matter?
as you want. Yeah, I mean, you
Okay.
can anybody.
Um, if uh, if Pat Fryermuth played at that level, I think that would answer my worries about have our a second wide receiver that could play out. Like if we don't need that if Fryermuth can be that good, and I think our offense could then be the kind like well rounded, have a good passing game to complement its presumably hopefully fairly competent running game. Uh, yeah, I think that would be good, right? Let's make because that's a big jump. Fryermuth going to an All Pro level is a substantial increase, and I think you want to pick someone that it would be the biggest increase, as it were. Uh, that might be it.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Especially these days for a tight end to be first team All Pro, you gotta. If you don't have 1,000 yards, you have to have double digit touchdowns. So
Yeah,
it's quite a season.
yeah. And it's not I kind he seems like the kind of player that could. I mean, not very realistically. I don't, he's not gonna be All Pro. If he is, I'll do something. We'll come up with something that I have to do. uh, actually, that's good. We should think about something.
I don't know why this came
But
to my head, but I think if maybe I'll make you smash your face into a cake if he's All Pro
into
on
a what?
camera. A cake.
Oh, a cake. Okay, yeah. Okay, that's good. I think you said a kick, and then I was trying to figure out what would that be. But anyway, okay, yeah. I'll smash my face into a cake on camera if Pat Fryermuth is a first team
What about
All
second
Pro.
team?
Second team, yeah, still
Okay.
smaller cake, smaller cake.
And
um,
does this have to be AP only, or if any agency gives him All
I
Pro
think
designation?
let's say AP. Yeah,
Okay.
like if we did it, yeah, no, that doesn't count. Um, yeah, but I think like he should have more stats than he's had. But it would still shock the heck out of me if he became first or second team All Pro.
Yeah, especially because there's a lot of competition these days at the tight end position.
Yeah.
Um, okay, and this is a little more just trying to gauge your optimism here. Um, what is your bar for a successful season this year? And so the way that I'm going to gauge this is if I would guarantee you that you would achieve, the team would achieve some level of success, guaranteed, but no more. That's it. What level would that have to get to before you would just take that versus just rolling the dice for whatever the season will hold?
Hmm. So there's all sorts of like complications to this question. So if I roll these dice, no, if I don't roll the dice and I just pick it, do I know going in that that's where we're going this year? And then
No,
like, not okay,
no,
because I,
you
I
you
like
get
the
to
uncertainty,
forget, and
right?
then yeah,
Yeah.
you get to forget, but you're making the decision for yourself now.
Hmm. Okay. I think I would I would take a playoff win in the wild card or divisional, obviously. But yeah, I think I would take a playoff win, and that would be successful. Compared to, it's been a long time, 7 years since we had a playoff win. Um, and that would be good enough, I think. I mean, I would certainly like more, right? But yeah, I mean, also we have a really tough schedule and stuff. So, I think I mean, different criteria for how tough a schedule is, but the AFC North collectively has the toughest schedule supposedly this year. I think ours is the worst of them somehow. So I guess it's probably going to be a dogfight to make the playoffs again, like always. And so it would probably end up being a wild card win. But I would take that. It's been long enough.
Does it? Do you have any criterion for the quality of the win? Like, if it is a Super Bowl 40 kind of win, okay, or does it need to be something
It
stellar?
might need to be a little better than that. Yeah, it might need to be like more than that. We just totally lucked out. Uh, um, but I don't know. In some sense, yeah, I think it should be better. I think it should be better than like just playing terribly and somehow winning. Right?
It's weird to me because I have not had a lot of playoff experiences. I've basically had one and done, or like go to the Super Bowl or AFC Championship game. I haven't had a lot of like we win one game and then we lose, you know. And when I have, like, the first year of Mahomes, we won one game. I think that's the only time actually Mahomes hasn't won two playoff games in a playoff run. Um,
That's
we won the
absurd.
first one, but the second one was like the first time we ever hosted the AFC Championship game, so it was still really exciting. Then the only other time in my recollection that we did that was in 2015. We won a wild card game. We like stomped Houston on the road and then went to Foxborough and lost to New England in a game that was like a prototypical Andy Reid game where it was like they really beat us by two touchdowns, but we scored really late to make it a one score game. And so in the record books, it looks a little closer than it was. That's what Andy Reid games used to be like before Mahomes came along. But yeah, so that year I do remember. I don't know. It's weird because like how long I don't really know how to answer that question because it hasn't happened very often to me. But like, how much does the excitement of one playoff win go away once you lose the next game immediately?
Yeah, I think it does definitely go away. I mean, I think it can depend on a lot of factors, though, right? Like if you haven't won a playoff game in 7 years, then winning one playoff game and then losing the next week still might feel not so bad, right? It might feel like once you win that first one, you're playing with house money or whatever at that point, and
Yeah.
whatever can happen. That's how it's felt when we've gotten to the playoffs the last several years, to be honest. It's like, well, whatever. We can lose this. It's fine. But that's after, a season of trials and tribulations, which I would prefer to have fewer of. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I bet too it depends on how much you like truly deep down think you could win the Super Bowl because
Yeah.
I don't. I feel like in 2003 I thought we could win the Super Bowl, and then I don't think I thought so until like 2017 or
Yeah.
2008. Like
I think
in
that's right.
2004 and 2005 I thought maybe we could, but we didn't even make the playoffs those years. So
Yeah. I'm thinking about like in 2014, we had missed the playoffs the two prior years, and then we lost in the wild card to the Ravens. But we were like, I think we were pretty banged up going into that. And I remember thinking, like, I'm just happy that we got back to the playoffs, to be honest. We lost some bad games that year. So it wasn't like, I don't think it was likely that we were going to win the Super Bowl. In 2015, that was a painful one. We won one playoff game against, I guess, the Bengals. Oh, that was a fun game. Yeah, we won a game against the Bengals, and then went to Denver, and we should have won that game. We're driving in the fourth quarter with the lead in their territory, and then our third string running back Fitzgerald Toussaint fumbled. And then the ensuing drive, Peyton Manning had like the sack, no sack, like basically dive and then get up and then complete a huge pass to Emmanuel Sanders.
oh, I
Uh,
forgot about that.
that was a painful sequence of events, and they ended up winning that game after that. Um, and then they beat the Patriots and they won the Super Bowl. So I feel like we had them on the ropes. We should have won that game, and we would have been like we definitely could have won the Super Bowl that year. But so that's a painful loss. That was actually one of those plays, maybe the Toussaint fumble or the Manning fake sack. Talk about fake snap, but fake sack is good. Fake spike. Um, yeah, that one like was one of those ones I thought about changing when you asked me that question. That was a
I
tough one.
actually forgot about, like, I remember the AFC Championship game. I forgot about this divisional round game that Denver won. Yeah, wow. Now, I honestly didn't recall it until you talked about the fake sack, like the give himself up, but not really. Like, I completely forgot about that.
Apparently, he had planned that. Like, I guess that's a nice way to like, game the rules, right? But he had thought like, if it's a situation where it looks like he and Emmanuel Sanders had talked about this, like if the situation looks like it, I'm going to get sacked. I'm just going to go down and then I'll get back up and hope the refs don't call it a surrendering. Like, make it look like I tripped, basically. Um, so that was frustrating as a Steelers fan, but it's a nice play.
He, what's weird is, like, I think, and rightfully so, that season is remembered as like Manning getting carried. We actually were the team that knocked him out because we picked him off like 3 times or something. We won in Denver. It was the first time we'd beaten Denver in a long time. We picked him off a bunch, and Brock Osweiler ended up coming in, and then he like won some big, like Brock Osweiler beat the Patriots, and I think that like helped them get to the playoffs, and Manning came back. But I feel like in the playoffs, Manning actually like made some really important throws for as much as that was a defense-led championship. He threw 2 big touchdowns to Owen Daniels, I think, against the Patriots. He had some big throws still.
I don't really remember much. I remember watching the Patriots Broncos game and being frustrated that we weren't in it, but I don't remember much about it. And honestly, I still just remember Manning as being a sort of like, yeah, being carried by the defense there.
I think that
But
was
that's probably just the
particularly true in
narrative.
the Super Bowl. I mean, I think it was true, but I do think that he had some moments where he had to make plays that ultimately led to them winning, and he did.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's
all
hard not
right,
to be
well,
happy for them. Like, for at least for Manning, I'm sure you can avoid being happy for the Broncos. uh, if they
well,
won the Super
yeah.
Bowl.
What's weird is, like, as much as I hated the Broncos, I still didn't want Brady to win the Super Bowl, so it was like a real difficult situation. And I was really in on the like Brady Manning rivalry thing. Like, I just wish Brett Manning didn't go to the Broncos.
Yeah.
But I was still like, okay, well, at least Manning got another Super Bowl, as much as it stinks.
Yeah. Those are situations you don't like to be in, where like no matter who is winning is bad for you.
Yeah.
I've been in those. Everyone.
All right. Well, that's all I had for the state of the Steelers.
All right. Do you want to do some Chiefs, State of the Chiefs before we take a break?
Sure.
So, um, so first is just some timely rumors, really a rumor of a rumor, which was possibly started by Manny Abarca, a legislator from Jackson County, Missouri. You might be familiar with where I'm going here, who said that San Antonio might try to lure the Chiefs away from Kansas City. Uh, what are your thoughts on that? And so that's the first part. Second part is, if they did go to San Antonio, which seems quite unlikely, impossible even. Suppose it happened. How would you feel? But first questions first.
Yeah, I don't think that they are going to San Antonio. I think it's a reasonable worry that they would go to Kansas because the Kansas legislature is trying to get some stuff done. But I think still the most likely uh, situation is that they stay, and they might even stay in Arrowhead, honestly. Just a refurbished Arrowhead. I think I would lean as that being the most likely situation, next being Kansas. And I just still think it's exceedingly unlikely they leave the greater Kansas City area.
Yeah, that's what the tenor of this article seemed to be that I was reading about it. That it's not going to happen, and I wondered if there were like other reasons that this Mania Barca was bringing this up, just to sort of scare people into voting again and voting affirmatively for. I guess it was like some sort of tax increase, right, to pay for.
Yeah,
Was it
I
a new
think I
stadium
missed
or upgrades?
upgrade. So the initial proposal was actually a joint proposal by the Chiefs and the Royals. And
Okay.
so it was a 3/8 of a cent tax. I think I waffled back and forth and ended up settling on the 3/8% tax, which was wrong. It was 3/8 of a cent tax, and it was to refurbish Arrowhead and build a new stadium for the Royals in downtown Kansas City. Um,
Also, wouldn't be
I
out by Arrowhead anymore,
No,
the Royal Stadium.
The Royals would move. But the Chiefs have now said that they are decoupling from the Royals, and each franchise is doing their own thing now. Um, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Manny Abarca or anyone suggesting the Chiefs will move in any kind of serious way is kind of probably being a mouthpiece of the Hunts, who would love to get some public money and somehow get the fans to get scared. So I think that's probably what that was.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Okay. So don't take it seriously. But then imagine it did happen. Imagine they moved to San Antonio. What would happen in your psychological world?
Well, it's it's hard to imagine, but it would not be good. I would not like that. I yeah, I don't know. It is weird to think like I don't know if a new team came to Kansas City, I would definitely start rooting for that new team. I feel like if we just like kept the status quo, but the Chiefs were just in San Antonio now, I guess I don't know. I think it depends on how acrimonious the departure was. Like if it's like it was real, like if the Hunts just looked really bad in the whole process, kind of like the Bennetts did when they moved the Seattle Sonics to Oklahoma City, or the Cronkies when they moved the Rams to LA. Like I think I would just that would be it, and I would just find another team. Maybe I would just restart the cycle and be like a Bears fan, and then that would be terrible. Watch them for a while. Hope we draft a great quarterback or something. I don't know. That would
Yeah.
be real tough, but I could see a scenario where I continued rooting for them, but I think that scenario is near impossible if another team comes to Missouri.
So what? I mean, this would never happen. But let's just suppose the Chiefs moved to San Antonio and the Raiders moved to Kansas
Oh
City.
man, I had a feeling you were going there. uh, and they like stayed the Raiders. Did they
Like
change
in
their
terms of the
name?
name,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's say they stay the Raiders.
I mean, it's really hard for me to imagine doing that. I don't think so.
You just abandoned the sport at that point.
Yeah. I'd be like that Rob Lowe picture where he has a hat that just has an NFL
Yeah.
logo. I would just be that.
Yeah, that would be. But who would be happy about that? Basically, no one would be happy by this. That's why it wouldn't happen, right? Like no one in Kansas
Yeah.
City would like that. No one in any Oakland Raider fan would like. No, they would all hate it. Not Oakland or wherever. Any Raider fan would hate it. And I guess people in San Antonio might be happy, but they've had a rough history. Apparently, I was learning the history of San Antonio when we were in Texas, and they deserve a good team. I mean, they've had the Spurs, so they were good. That's
Yeah.
fine. um,
Did you go to the Alamo? I remember I went to
yeah,
the
we did.
Alamo once. I think I was like 7. I went to the Alamo. I don't really remember anything about
It's there. Yeah.
it.
Uh,
So
yeah.
you remember it? Remember
Yeah,
the
I
Alamo?
do. I do. I
Hmm.
don't know if that's what they were telling me to remember, but I do remember something about the Alamo. Yeah. There's a cool river walk in San Antonio. Like
Yeah,
and
I remember
that's
that.
that's like that was nice.
I remember 3 things about San Antonio: the Alamo, the Riverwalk, and I was there the weekend that they were playing the Alamo Bowl, and Purdue was one of the teams, and they have this like steam engine that's like their Boilermaker engine. It was just going around the town like all the time. Yeah, I was there. Those are the 3 things I remember about being in San Antonio.
Was it like driving around the streets?
Yeah, driving around the streets, and it was quite. Well, I was looking for a better word than just loud, but it was loud.
It was like, yeah. Uh, well, what about this brings up another question. I thought about trying to get some question about the KC Wolf mascot, but I didn't really have a good one. But here's like, suppose you got to be on the field for Chiefs games, but you had to be the mascot, the KC Wolf guy. Would you do that?
I think so. I mean, as long as like I was reasonably compensated for the effort. If I had to do
Yeah.
it for free, probably still actually. It's probably a
Yeah.
good view. Yeah, like I'd still do it for free.
Yeah, you get up close with the players, I guess. I don't really know how close you
Yeah,
can be, but yeah.
and
What
you
about if
you
you had
know
to
all you.
be? Go ahead, sorry.
I mean, all you have to do is like show emotion when something happens on the field and bang your head against the goalpost when the other team scores. You know.
What about the people that like stand facing the crowd so there's no like on rushers and they can't really watch the game? Would you do that?
No. Because I don't want to actually be responsible if something happens in the crowd. I feel like I would be the guy that would be so bored and trying to figure out what's going on in the game. Like I actually think I'd be paying attention to what's happening in the crowd. And then you
Yeah.
might get your ACL torn by someone diving on your knees from behind. So it's a double whammy.
Yeah, that seems like a job where you want to pick people who don't care about football, who actually
Yeah.
dislike football, essentially. Um,
Yeah, it's like a
wonder
moment of pride for them. I turned my back on this game.
if, right. Uh, okay, well, should we take a break and then come back to do some more Chief stuff? And we're back. I got to do it that time. Well, that's fun. Um, so next question about the Chiefs is in some ways connected, I think, with the Jim Harbaugh discussion. Uh, but maybe I'll meander my way into it because so several Steelers players, Najee Harris being one of them, have said in recent years they think they need more sort of day to day structure in their activities, right? Like that this is your time for. I mean, I'm sure they have meetings and whatnot, but this is your time for training. This is your time for. I don't know exactly what kind of structure he's talking about, but they need more structure from the coaches about what they should be doing at different times of the day and how they should be going about their business, essentially. And he was saying, like in college, we had all this extra structure imposed by the team, and we don't have that in the NFL. Um, so the first question here is just how much do you have a sense of how much sort of schedule structure there is in the Chiefs players sort of weekly um, schedule? I just said schedule twice, but like how structured is it? Do they have um, assigned workout times and things like that, or is it more like take care of yourself and just make sure you make the meetings and do the practices?
My understanding is that there's a little bit of leeway. Like Andy Reid seems to be one of the he's really big on his practices and everything being efficient. He wants to use time well, but and so he does a lot in the time that he's allotted, but I think he's kind of the work hard, play hard mentality that okay, you do that and then when you're not in the facility, you kind of do what you're going to do. That's at least the reading I have. I mean, even phase one of our workouts now, Mahomes and the receivers, like Mahomes runs that in Texas. Like, and so he, like Andy will talk to Mahomes or for, and again, some of this stuff is like league rules stuff. I don't know how much in the off season you're allowed to, how much contact you're allowed to have and whatever. But, uh, yeah, Andy he seems like he's always been kind of a player's coach in that way, and that the players like that. I'm actually quite interested that I've never heard of a player asking for more structure in the NFL. Because my understanding is that as a football player in general, your life is very structured, even in the NFL. Like because you could theoretically eat all your meals at the facility. I don't think anyone's stopping you from being there. And like, if you want to come up with a workout plan with like the strength trainer and stuff, like that's what they're there for. Well, I find that an interesting proposition because my understanding is that if you want structure, there are people that'll be happy to structure your day for you in an NFL locker. That's at least that's what I would think.
Yeah, I think Harris was thinking that like he was some of the other players on the team didn't take it seriously enough, and so he was thinking they
Oh,
needed more hand holding essentially. Uh, which like I can see like you wouldn't. I'm not surprised that there isn't more hand holding, right? Again, it's the NFL, and but beyond that, Mike Tomlin probably wants to treat these men as men or as adults, and not expect them to need that kind of hand holding, essentially. So, maybe it's some sort of indictment of something that Harris thought that they did need more of it, um, but maybe that's just a particular group of guys or somehow the particular culture that had gotten a foothold. When I don't remember when he said this, it might have been last year, or the year before. I'm not sure, but it was recent, and it did make me wonder, like is there a sort of culture problem there in the locker room? But,
There, I mean,
uh, yeah,
I do remember former players saying things like, there are guys in the NFL who are just playing for a paycheck. Like they don't actually care that much. They do the bare minimum of what they have to do, and they're just treating it like any other job. And I wonder if that's just irritating to someone like Najee Harris, who is more driven than that.
yeah, yeah. That's believable. I mean, I do wonder this. So the reason I thought this might be connected with Harbaugh is again, like it seems like he's as a college coach, you can do a lot of that, right? You can do a lot of sort of the paternalistic sort of structuring of their days and whatnot. Like this is what you need to be doing, and this is what you need to be doing next, and whatnot. And maybe that is the kind of thing that grows old on NFL players. Is that what you were gesturing at when you thought he might not be around for uh, too long in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I mean, not that I specifically know what his like workout pattern is or anything or how he structures things, but I think even just the way he deals with people and deals with players, he's such an animated guy. Like he's the kind of the only other coach that I feel like right now is like a little bit on the borderline with this kind of stuff is Nick Sirianni. I feel like when people get like so animated and clearly like there's a coach type that is a motivator, and maybe this is my bias against Harbaugh, but I definitely see him more as a motivator than like an X's and O's guy. Like he's not Sean McVay, right? Harbaugh definitely can create a play style that is effective and can be creative with his play style. Look at like Colin Kaepernick. But I think that a lot of it is he gets guys that he thinks have a certain attitude and he tries to create a certain attitude in a team. And that's something that is effective when you're winning and effective when you're new, but not so effective when people have heard the message before, and not so effective when you get into places of adversity. Like the message gets kind of hollow. And one of the things Lonnie said when we talked to him last time is that it wasn't just that he didn't last long when he was in San Francisco. He actually didn't last long when he was anywhere except at Michigan. And he was like the Michigan golden boy, and Lonnie hypothesized that maybe they had a little longer leash for him there because he was their golden boy, and so they were willing to put
Mm-hmm.
up with more. So I don't know. I think of it more in that sense, and I'm actually a little interested in the like now football player development and this idea of because when kids are like 16 to 18, that structure is important, right? The younger you are, the more important structure is for you, and then you start creating your own structure as you become an adult. And so you wonder if there's a little mismatch in with some coaches in that ability to like slowly transition people out of that. Because on one hand, when you're young, the structure is very important to help you build a work ethic. However, if the structure is overbearing, then it prevents you from learning to actually build that work ethic yourself. You become reliant on the structure to navigate you through your day. So it's almost like when you're building a player up as they're growing, you have to combine, and I think this is true in any form of teaching anyone anything actually, is that you start by providing them with what they need and then progress to providing them with what they need to be able to provide for themselves. And I think that second step often gets lost. And I wonder if that's the kind of thing that's happening. And then you get these players who don't know how to navigate getting ready for a football game without a structure.
Mm-hmm. It's like the fish,
Yeah.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
Give a man a fish, teach a man a fish. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that is what's going on, and maybe some of these players that come from like super highly structured programs in college are they do maybe they find it tougher when they get to the NFL. But well, yeah, maybe that's it. I don't know.
And then you wonder, like, so someone like who a coach who doesn't get that criticism or that question, is it because they are particularly good at transitioning structured people to unstructured, or they are already identifying these people that they think are going to be a problem and not drafting them or not picking them and taking people that have already shown the ability to do things independently?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, that's that's curious. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think um, it does feel like that there's some these are the kinds of things that you don't see talked about much, when people talk about whether someone's a good coach or not. But I do feel like these are the kinds of things that they have to be thinking about a lot on a daily basis, or on like how they're going to build a team this year or whatnot. Right? These are the kinds of questions that maybe the more substantive kind of questions that Bill Belichick would have wanted to answer, as opposed to trite ones that he was always impatient with. Right?
Yeah.
Um,
What? And I think the main reason, we kind of had a similar discussion earlier where we talked about how a lot of times people judge coaching based on in-game decision making, whereas there are all these other things like that. That's why coaches like with the old iteration of Andy Reid or Marty Schottenheimer before him, coaches that just win a lot but didn't have playoff success. I feel like people are too quick to come off of those coaches because there's so much that goes into winning, and if you've proven that in the NFL you can consistently build a winner, that means something. Even Tomlin not going under 500, like that means something. That's not easy. And
yeah,
I think sometimes when coaches make a stupid decision in the game to punt at a certain time, or they throw the challenge flag or don't throw the challenge flag, or like, oh, they're a terrible coach. And it's like, well, there's so much else that has brought your team to the fact that you're not going 3-14, because I've had teams like that too. And then you start to really respect the guy that can just be competent.
yeah. 8-8 is an achievement, or 9-8 now. Um, okay. I guess. Yeah. Okay. So that those are my main like questions about the Chiefs. Do you want to move on to some general NFL things?
Sure. I have a question for you. I'm curious to hear your take on. So we talked about mock drafts and your views on mock drafts, and I wonder. There's another thing that's a little more hypothetical and maybe not giving you a ton of new information. That's the release of the NFL schedule. I wonder,
Yeah.
what's your thought about the NFL schedule release? Does this excite you at all?
And timely, right? Because it should be happening soon.
Yeah, so a lot of people thought it was going to happen this week, but the NFL has still not said anything officially. So now estimations are maybe next week or the week after.
Interesting. Yeah. I guess I'm ambivalent about the NFL schedule release, because on the one hand, I do feel like I am not learning anything really that's going to impact game outcomes. Right? It's like, okay, well, we knew we were playing these people at some time or other, right? But it does feel in some way kind of more significant than like a mock draft or something to me. And I guess maybe part of what's significant there is like every season is kind of like like a it's got a story to it, as it were. Your team was good at this point, and they had a bunch of injuries or whatever. They hit a rut, and then they came back and rebound. Like whatever it is. Uh, and then once you have the schedule out, you can sort of start to picture more about how that would happen, right? It's like, oh, that's going to be a tough stretch there. Maybe we're going to tank for a while, and then rebound, in the next month or whatever. But so maybe that's all that it is. But it does feel slightly more significant to me, and I think maybe it is because you can start to imagine what the narrative could be for the season, even if you have it rarely is what you expect it to be going in. But um, yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Is the schedule release significant for you?
I I think so. I actually have a very similar view to you. I think that it's not an end all be all, but like it is, and I'm not that much of like an abstract thinker. Like, so it's, just the concept of us playing the Chargers is not as meaningful to me as like knowing a date and a location. That's like, okay, I know on this day we're going to play the Chargers. Like, for some reason, it just feels more real at that point. It's like, I know we're going to play this team and that team, but I think that it really helps to, and in, like you said, the sequence, and you start, and when your bye week is, apparently that's like a big thing for a
Yeah,
lot of
that's
teams about when
significant.
the bye week's going to be. And so it interestingly does matter to me. I think it's, for me mentally, it is what really signifies like the beginning of the new year, the new football year. Like, we have a schedule. I have games to look forward to. I know when our primetime games are. I can even, maybe not this year, but in future years when my child and potentially children are older, I can think about when I could go to some games. So those kinds of things. I do like having something more concrete. In that vein, I'm glad you didn't say it was completely pointless, because I was going to address some Steelers schedule rumors now.
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
um, so there's an account on Twitter that does a lot of like digging, called it's at Nerding on NFL, and there are a couple of things that this account feels fairly certain they know already. Uh, One is that week one, they're fairly certain that the Steelers will start away from home, and that week two they are likely to also have an away game, but that's not like confirmed to the level of certainty for week one. So you may be starting first 2 weeks away. Rumors are that that game week one might be at Denver, as like the Russell Wilson return to Denver game,
Yeah.
and there have been some rumors that that'll be on Sunday Night Football. Uh, the only team going through the entire NFL, the only game I can assure you it probably isn't, assuming these away things are correct, is the Ravens, because the Ravens are also playing away week one, apparently. Um, so, is first of all, what would you think about two away games to start the year? Do you have preferences about like when your home games are? Would you rather get them out of the way early to like rack up some wins, or save them for the end of the year?
I think. Yeah. I mean, I guess there was a long streak there. I think we had like 9 straight years where started the season away, and then that broke either last year or the year before. It broke recently. Um, I remember thinking that sucked, but I don't know. I do think, the typical model of at least Steelers under Tomlin and probably every NFL team is that you improve as the season goes on. And so it does seem like you would really want like the crucial, like any, you know, the home. Well, I don't know. I just actually now I'm talking myself out of it. I was thinking if you're improving as it goes on, then you want the home games later, but that doesn't make any sense. You would want whatever game later. You want to just be better and have a better chance of winning it. Uh, so I don't know. I'm I do feel like there's like a kind of, well, this gets into my question for you, but about like a sort of, one can discern a kind of momentum that you might get from a week one game at home that you win, and then that builds for the rest of the season or something like that. I was going to ask you about momentum in general, but I guess I don't know. I If I have a strong preference about opening the season away or at home. I guess, could you is it possible for you to have like, well, now that it's an uneven amount of games, like suppose you had like all your away games first and then all your home games in the second half of the season. Like that seems possible, right? At least I don't think anything in the schedule like prohibits it. Maybe there's some rule in there that does prohibit having a certain number of away games in a row or something. But like, would that be bad? I don't know. I can't, like, that's the extreme version of this. Like, would you want to, like, if you had the choice, would you want all your game, like, why not just spread them out? I don't know. What do you think? Would it be bad to have like all your away and then all your home, or that all your home and all your, I can't tell.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I do. It does seem like it would get tiring for the players to like fly every week. Like that might kind of build up and have
Yeah,
a cumulative negative effect. Um, what's weird is I used to really, really prize home games. You know, the Chiefs, I think in the 90s, at least through the first, like, through 97 or 98, had like the best home record in the 90s. And we've always, like, when we've been good, had really good home records. And then this past year, I think we were 4-4 at home, and we won the Super Bowl. And Mahomes has been like exceptional on the road. He actually lost his first road divisional game this year. It's the first time in his career. When we lost at Denver, that's the first time he lost in the division on the road. He's still
it's
never
absurd.
lost in LA or never lost at the Raiders. Um, but he's lost to both of them at home. So that home road thing has like become less important to me recently because we seem to play really well on the road when we're good. But I do have two kinds of I with when we've been good, it feels like in many years we're good in September and we're good in December. So to me, I think for whatever reason, that just seems to be the way that Andy Reid does things. I think it's because he'll put in a somewhat new offensive install over the offseason. And so then in September, it's new for people. And so it takes the league a couple weeks to figure out what he's doing. Then when the league figures out what he's doing, they start adjusting. And now this is like pure speculation on my part. But I think with the adjustments, he is loath to make any major adjustments to the adjustments until like we're rounding in toward the playoffs. So he kind of figures out what they're doing. He makes slight tweaks. He's still, like we said before, he's trying to win games, but Andy Reid clearly has like levels of install. And for sure, there's like a playoff install that is stuff that is like saved for the playoffs. So he's like building his ability, but he seems like he's really interested in the team peaking toward the end of the regular season. But it's nice to start early. I feel like you bank, like if you win your first 3 or 4 games, that just helps you. If you struggle a little bit in the middle of the season, you've banked some wins there. So
Yeah,
I
it certainly like could be psychologically helpful, right? It's like, oh, we've already got this many wins in the bank. It's not it's probably not going to be a lost season now. Whereas if you're like 1-8, well, 1-8's not good. 1-4 or something like that, which we've started some seasons that badly, and that puts it's not a good feeling. I'm not as a fan, and I am sure not as a player or coach.
yeah,
It probably makes just life a lot more miserable
yeah.
on a week
Even
to week
this
basis.
this past year, we lost to the Lions to open, and then I think we won our next 6 games. So like for as then we were just kind of mediocre for the rest of the year, but we had started 6-1, so it made it okay. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know about home road. I will say it's more of a nostalgic thing, but the Chiefs always seem to win at home in December, except when the Raiders kicked our and then Christmas this year. But besides that one, in general, it feels like we do well at home in December when it gets cold. So,
Yeah, I guess
what
that's
about
another wrinkle, right? Like whether playing like if
yes?
you're in a place with where the environment's a factor, and that's I guess that is a whole well, you can get into the questions of like is your team better is it better suited to play in cold snow games, or is it better suited to play in warm games, and that might impact whether you want to play when you want your home games, essentially, depending on where your team is. But I don't know that I have a clear sense of what our offense is even going to be, so I don't even know how to gauge where what will be good or bad at, to be honest.
You know, this is I feel like I have an idea. So the people have been talking about how home field advantage has been decreasing as time has gone on. So we could implement your idea of splitting home and road games, and all the warm weather teams get home games early in the year when it's really hot, and then we switch, and all the cold weather teams get home games when it gets really cold. Try to maximize home field advantage again. Like a Green Bay cannot have a home game until the second half of the year,
Yeah.
but like Miami or Jacksonville, they get them all done in like September, October when it's still hot there.
Would teams like this? Who's this helping? I feel like it probably helps the cold weather teams more, right?
Although I do
Because
remember like Josh Allen, they like blamed a loss in Miami or Jacksonville because it was like too hot.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There have been. I remember times when like playing in Florida and the Steelers were playing in Florida and had to wear the black uniforms, and it
Yeah.
was oh my God, it's hot down here. Yeah, I could. I don't. Those are times when I was like, I don't really envy the players playing in these conditions. Like, I'm glad I'm not there.
Maybe that would be the day not to be the mascot.
Yeah, that's right. I wonder if the mascot suits have anything cooling in them or warming in them. Well, I have. So my question, the first question I was going to ask you was about momentum, which I sort of felt compelled to touch on, I guess, in my response to your question. But uh, it was very vague, and I there's a number of ways I can try to precisify it, I guess. But do you think momentum is a real thing? That's the basic question here. And if you need me to talk more about what that possibly means, let me know.
So, yes, but with a little bit of like a caveat. That do I think that I think that if one doesn't believe that momentum exists, then momentum doesn't exist. In that I don't think that inherently having, thrown 3 picks in a row makes it more likely unless there's something that the defense has like figured out about you that is why they're getting those picks. So we're ignoring those situations where you make 3 bad plays that have ended 3 drives. I don't think, assuming that you're able to learn, that makes it more likely that you're going to do it in the next drive. But then you add the psychological layer on top of it. And if you start believing, which I think is natural, it's human, that you can't do it because you haven't been doing it, then it will have an impact on you. So I I understand, this became like, this was a real big analytics movement. I remember the first person I remember was Bill Barnwell in like the 2013-14 range, just being like, momentum doesn't exist. And he would like show all these examples about how, and it's like, yeah, I agree with the idea that just because you score a touchdown at the end of the half doesn't mean that you necessarily will come out of the next half playing better, unless you believe it means that, because that actually really does impact, and that's been shown in studies all over in performance. Even something as simple as telling kids they'll do well on a math test improves their math scores. So like, you the internal belief is all that matters, and I think most players and most humans do believe that when they're doing things well, they're going to continue doing things well. So that's why I would say I think momentum does exist.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So let me follow up on that. So, uh, what's the do you have like a I don't mean like a but do you have like a mechanism in mind for how your belief that you're doing well is going to, and you believe in momentum or whatever that does impact your subsequent play? Because because here's the contrast, right? So there's like one this study by actually I had it here, but Tversky was one of them, about the hot hand fallacy, right, in basketball, where like if you made a couple shots, you're more likely to make the next shot, essentially. And they found essentially no, right, like that the shots are independent, despite the sort of all the perceptions about them not being independent, about it being more likely that you'll make the next one if you've made the last several. Uh, and so that looks like it's evidence that your your essentially momentum is just an illusion, right? If you take the hot hand fallacy and momentum to be the same kind of thing, where I guess they're yeah, you could read them the same way. One's kind of like individual level and one's team level, but whatever. Um, so I guess a first question is, what do you make of that? Is that a counterpoint to your belief that momentum is a real thing, and if not, why?
I think it's an important counterpoint, but I don't think it's dispositive that momentum's not a real thing. I think that because the important part to me is that when you believe you can do something, you will try things that you may not try before. And so even if your ability to do things hasn't changed, the fact that you're willing to do things that you wouldn't be willing to do if you didn't believe in yourself can change the outcome.
Yeah, okay, that's awesome. That's exactly what my complaint was with this study, right? So I was going to quote from the abstract. They say, after analyzing these like successes and failures, and seeing whether like a string of successes makes it more likely that you'll make the next shot. They say the outcomes of previous shots influenced these players' predictions about their performance, but not their performance. Uh, so that is, they thought that they were going to be, if they made several in a row, they thought they were going to be doing better on the next shot than they actually were. Um, but I think you're right, right? Like if you're feeling good, you're feeling like you're playing well, then you will try things that you wouldn't have tried in other situations. But if you think you're playing terribly, right? And so that wasn't really captured by their as far as I could tell. I mean, I didn't read the whole study, but it looks like they were just looking at like strings of shooting basically, and a lot of them were free throw shootings. So I don't know that there's, yeah. I mean, I think you're right essentially that your confidence in how you're doing does impact the things that you'll try, and if you're a good player, then you'll try things and be successful more often, even not more often than you would have been otherwise. It's just more often because you're a good player, right? So I think I agree.
And
I think there's a mechanism there for it to be a real thing.
and especially when you get into more and more complex things, the free throw is a very simple, you know, essentially controlled environment, which is why I'm assuming they chose it for the study. But performance, I think, when it comes to things like momentum, involves these very complicated situations, where you're making multiple decisions and trying to get something done. And when you're doing something like reading a defense, when you're having a good day, you might just trust your eyes a little bit more. That helps you go through the progression faster. Whereas if you're having a bad day, you might not trust what you're seeing, and it prevents you from getting to where you need to get. And I think that's all a component of trying things. It's that belief helps you kind of push through. And there is a study that I find very compelling too. The study that I think it was actually with free throw shooting as well, basically hypothesizing that well learned behaviors, when you are under pressure, you perform them better. But poorly learned behaviors, when you're under pressure, you perform them worse. And I think there's a component there. So some of that is just about like cerebellar, like non-cerebral things, when it comes to athletics. But I think some of it too is like when you think you're good, then I think it allows you to, again, you'll do things that you wouldn't do before, and you'll push in ways that you wouldn't have pushed before. And a lot of what we see in athletics is that sometimes it's just the person that's still pushing at the end that ultimately wins. Like if you're trying to find a solution when your opponent has given up on trying. And why do you give up? Because you think you can't. And why do you keep trying? Because you think you can, and you think you can do it. And I think that's where momentum really comes into play.
Yeah, that's cool. And then that even like allows it to be as like it could carry over from one game to the next, right? Like it could be the kind of thing. It's like, oh, this is working. We're gonna keep riding this like whatever we're doing right now, whatever a bunch of pocket shots against cover twos or whoever like whatever the offense is doing or whatever the defense is doing that's working. They might just have the confidence to keep trying sort of absurd plays. And so if you do get that, yeah. So I think right. I think we're on the same page here, and just the fact that there is sort of like the particular plays or particular events are still independent or outcomes are still independent doesn't mean that there is a mechanism whereby momentum would actually be really affect the process and the outcome.
And maybe, like, for example, if you're Mahomes and you don't believe in yourself, do you even ask if we could throw wasp? Like,
Right.
do you even, like, that confidence is important. And someone like Mahomes, he's having a bad day and he still has that confidence. But for the vast majority of us, like, we need some result to give us that confidence. We don't just inherently always believe we can do everything. So I think that's where it can really play to your advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, I also think just one other thing about these, like sometimes when people talk about it being a real thing or not being a real thing, I think they're talking past each other, right? Like there's also like the feeling of like, oh, we're on a roll now, right? And like no one should deny that one can feel that sometimes, right? Like that's a real feeling, right? That's a fun feeling too. It's also the compliment is not that fun, right? We're getting steamrolled right now, right? But both of those are real things as well. So like even if we're wrong here in our speculations about how momentum might make you try things, and if you're good, be successful, uh, there's still something that one can't really deny the existence of, namely the feeling of you know being on a roll or whatever.
Well, and that's why I'm so confident is that because you're right, you can't deny the existence of that feeling, and maybe not specifically in the sports scenario, but in general, I don't think you can deny the association between feeling and performance just in life. Like people do better at everything when they feel good, even if they're happy. Forget thinking you're good at it. Just being happy makes you do better at things. So, it seems very unlikely to me then that there wouldn't be some, even like placebo effect. Like how many studies have shown the effect of just telling people a medicine will work makes their subjective experience of the medication better, and
Yeah.
objective measures of improvement, like even things like vital signs are improve. So it's clear that there's a huge psychological aspect, and this kind of goes back to what I feel like I say way too often, but I just think that life is a subjective experience. How you feel and how you frame things completely impacts how your life goes, and we choose to view it how we want to view it, but it also affects our performance and not just our subjective experience.
Mm. That's nice. Nice to tie it in with the subjective. Yeah. um, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to do some anecdotes now, or do you want to take a break and then come back and do something?
Yeah, maybe we take a quick, and we're back. Um, so I feel like, what we should do is I'm just going to push record and we won't even decide who's going to say it. And we'll see how organic it is every time.
That's
How many
good.
times we talk over each other.
Every time I'm like tempted to say it, and then it's like, yeah, but like there's a standing expectation essentially that you'll say it. But now that we've addressed this openly, now it'll be like, yeah, it'll just be sort of a thrill each time. That's good.
This is how we feel. This is how we get to chase
Life
that
is a
feeling.
subjective experience. That's
Yeah,
right.
exactly. You have to make it exciting for yourself. Yeah. So, this is in your 30s. This is your
seek the
idea of
thrill where you
excitement.
can find it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
exactly.
Wow,
Uh,
that's something.
uh, so the last thing I wanted to talk about was the roast of Tom Brady. It was very bittersweet. I don't know. It was bittersweet when I found out about this because, as loath as I am to participate in anything celebrating Tom Brady, there were just too many people whose opinions I cared about and wanted to hear talk about Brady or anything. So I had to watch it. I didn't quite watch it live, but I started like 30 minutes after it started streaming, and so I watched it through. It was very long. It was like an actual 3
Yeah, it was
hours.
like 3 hours, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a long time.
And there was so much unnecessary fluff that could have been cut from it. Like they had Kim Kardashian come up and say some stuff, and Dana White from the UFC did some stuff, and I don't know. It was too many people.
This is probably what people think when they're listening to our podcast. So much unnecessary stuff that could have been cut. But
That's fair.
that's what we're in this for. No,
Well,
that's the good stuff.
at least to us.
Yeah.
It's another way we seek the thrill. uh, but first of all, just a general complaint I have about people's evaluations of these roasts. I don't think, unless someone is a comedian, you can't evaluate the person on the quality of their jokes because they didn't write any of their jokes. Like, to me, it's like it has to be about the delivery. That was my complaint with, because I was actually surprised because Tom Brady is somebody who, I assume gave rousing speeches in locker rooms and is, clearly motivated a lot of people. And I would imagine not solely through what he did, but also through what he said. I would have thought he would be better on at the podium, at the lectern, I should say. And he was fine. He just, to me, was he was an overactor. He was like what I would expect a ninth grader who was in a speech class to be delivering stuff. You know, it was just a little too animated, a little too like he delivered his lines with a little too much. You know, sometimes it's about the subtlety, and that was
Yeah.
not his strength. Um,
Yeah, you would have thought after having so much experience in front of like the press and whatnot that he would have his finger on the pulse there, whatever the appropriate saying is. But I didn't get to watch this yet, but I'm kind of more curious now, given this description of it, about what it's going to be like.
yeah, I think a couple of the comedians were really funny. And they really went all in with some of the jokes. I was surprised with one comedian actually. I won't like spoil it for you, but one comedian actually got Brady to stand up and tell him he had to stop.
Whoa, that's
It
good.
wasn't a joke about Brady, but I will just leave it at that. Um, so there's one joke though that I thought would be fun to unpack. This was Tom Brady in the roast himself, and he said, the NFL spent $20 million dollars and found that it was more probable than not that I was generally aware that someone may have deflated my footballs. You could have just given me the $20 million dollars and I would have told you I effing did it. So this, I feel like, has been unpacked a little bit online as far as like, was this an admission? Was this a joke? Was this somewhere on the spectrum? And you can imagine who falls in what camp. But I was interested in your thoughts. Like, what do you make of Tom Brady making that joke?
That's cool. I mean, yeah, I did see that. I saw that quote, and I did wonder what to make of it. I think my I think my take now is having not seen it and sort of not heard all the intonations that might be revelatory of something, I guess, is that he realizes he's like he can sort of say whatever at this point, and his legacy is not going to be tarnished one way or the other really at this point, right? And so I think he probably is just aware of that fact, and regardless of whether he did it or not, he can sort of he can he's so untouchable in this respect in terms of like NFL greatness and his NFL legacy that it doesn't really matter essentially. And so he realizes that, and he can just make a joke about it regardless of whether he did it or not. I think that's my take on on that statement or on that joke. Um, Again, having not seen it, but I don't know. Did watching it actually happen? Did you take something away differently than I'm interpreting here?
No, I think it's similar. My initial reaction was like, "Holy crap!" He admitted it, you know. But that's obviously just really colored by my Briars, but and like my opinion of Brady. But as I like saw, I don't want to say this for sure because I don't remember exactly, but I think this came after the basic premise of the setup of the joke was something like where's Roger Goodell? Like, why is basically saying like kind of calling out Goodell and then making this statement. But I agree with your assessment. I think he's untouchable, and I think he knows that this statement isn't going to change anybody's opinion about what he did. Those that really love him and didn't think he did it will just say it's a joke, and those that will take it as an admission would have already thought he did it in the first place. So I think that's the other thing, is it doesn't move the needle whatsoever.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. I could totally see it as him being like, this would be a really funny joke to make, or I could see him being like, this would be a really funny way to admit it and not at all like have any repercussion for it. I could see either one. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Either way, I like the sort of the self awareness that it indicates, right? That's I don't like much about Tom Brady, but I guess I like that.
yeah, it was interesting. I will say, I'm gonna come across as like a real sore person, but I feel like I was disappointed in his joke about the Chiefs. First of all, one thing that really surprised me, maybe again, this is just my bias, but I would have been shocked if you told me that we would get through a 3 hour roast of Tom Brady where they talk about he's the greatest of all time. And there is not a single mention of Patrick Mahomes. Nobody made one Patrick Mahomes reference in the entire roast. Maybe that shouldn't be surprising, but it's surprising to me.
I mean, I think among I think certainly among people who've watched the game for the time we've watched it, that is surprising, right? People, or more recently, yeah, you would think people, Mahomes should be in this conversation. Yeah, it is surprising. Did Manning come up at all?
He did. He
Yeah,
did.
see, that's weird.
Like, and Eli came up as a way to like make fun of, which I thought that's the way it would have been used. Like as some, if people were roasting him, they could at least make some comment about how like, maybe his legacy won't last very long or something. Yeah. But
Yeah,
Peyton came up. Aaron Rodgers came up. I'm trying to remember the context. Maybe I'm wrong about Aaron Rodgers coming up because I can't remember the specifics. But Eli came up. Yeah. To be fair, though, the people that were roasting him that were football people were all Patriots. So that might have helped.
yeah, yeah.
And well, actually, and Kevin Hart even started it by saying, "Oh, this is the roast of the greatest of all time." I didn't know Joe Montana's here. Where's Joe Montana? But because I feel like Mahomes, at the very least, should be in. I can't believe I'm saying this because I grew up feeling like Joe Montana was unequivocally the best quarterback that ever played. But I feel like you got to at least put Mahomes in the conversation with Montana now, even if you have Montana ahead of him. They're at least in the
Yeah.
same sphere.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch Montana play enough but how can you not watch Mahomes play and see what he's done over the last 6 years and think, not be blown away, basically, right? I
Yeah.
mean, uh, yeah, he's got to be well, anyway, yeah, it is surprising. What was his Chiefs joke?
So his Chiefs joke was, you know, you all say that you have the loudest stadium in the league. Well, I'm going to butcher this joke, but the premise was basically it's not that hard to have the loudest stadium in the league when all your fans are 14-year-old girls. It's like a Taylor Swift reference, but
I see.
like we set the record for the loudest stadium actually in a game against the Patriots in 2014. So like the Chiefs have been making this claim like forever, and Taylor Swift joined the scene now. I tried to complain about this to my wife, and she was like, "It's a joke," but I was like, "But it doesn't make sense." So I don't know if this is me being overly sensitive or if that's actually as bad of a joke as I think it is. Um,
Plus, it's a little personal for me because I wore a Taylor Swift sweatshirt to a Chiefs Patriots game this past season, and I feel like some shade has been thrown in my direction. So, uh, yeah, I take offense to that.
and the second half of his joke I thought was better. He said that, and speaking of, so he after that statement he said, and speaking of Taylor Swift, you all, if we let's look at eras, you've had 50 years of doing nothing and 5 years of success. Shake it off. Like I feel like at least that's like true.
I guess so. Yeah. Uh,
It's also to
well,
me
the Patriots
funny.
had nothing for a long
I
time.
know that's what I was thinking. It's funny coming from like he was on the Patriots who did nothing before he was there. So
Yeah. Um, well, that'll be interesting. Maybe I definitely need to watch that. Do you want to get to some anecdotes?
yeah, let's do it.
I think I went first last week. I think. Do you want to go?
All right, sure, I'll go. So my anecdote is from our time at Rockbridge. I'm dipping back into the AP psychology well, and
Well,
I I feel like there were a lot of interesting things that happened in that class because there were a lot of interesting characters in that class. And one such character was our friend who I think the reason why the story is so funny to me is that this friend was he was just, he's like one of the smartest people that you meet. Very, he won like all the regional state math competitions. He was basically one of those people that just seemed to be good at whatever he tried to do. Like he played varsity tennis. He was, I think he was one of the nominees for like court warming king, and he was like the only thing that got in the way of him succeeding at anything was how hard he tried. And to be fair to him, he didn't try at things he didn't think were important, and he didn't think AP psychology was important. So he would always be like cramming for tests the day, like we'd be coming in. It was an afternoon. Oh, it was the last period, right? Yeah. So he'd be like, we'd be coming into class like the last period of the day, and if we had a quiz or something, he would be like scrambling, trying to like read over the vocab words and whatever, or the terminology. I guess we don't call it vocab if it's not a language class, but all the terms that you have to remember. And we're like getting started for class, and he comes up to me and he's like, Ajay, what's ruptake? And I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
what? What are you talking about? He's like, what's ruptake? And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. That was like, and we were studying neurotransmitters at the time. And he finally had to open up his textbook and he showed me the word. And the word was reuptake, like reuptake of neurotransmitter. And he had pronounced it ruptake. And the only reason it's funny is because it's like possibly the smartest kid that I knew. And he's just scrambling. It's completely seriously like, what's ruptake? I was. I don't remember being more confused in a moment when someone like asks you something and you're just like, are you having a stroke? Like why are we not understanding each other? But yeah,
Yeah, I forgot about that. But like, you could see why. Like, if you hadn't done the reading and you were cramming and you just saw this word there, you would think "ruptake," right? Like that's how it's
yeah,
spelled.
yeah.
So like, it's not totally unfathomable why it happened, but I remember thinking this was just the most hilarious thing. that
Yeah,
that's
I feel like the
awesome.
combination of it being like, kind of, you can see how it came from, but it also sounds like just the word, it sounds so ridiculous sounded out. And it came from someone who is just such a smart person. The combination was just so funny.
Yep, that was a good one. I forgot about that. Oh gosh, ruptake. We should maybe that'll be the title of this episode.
Oh, yeah.
Ruptake. Re-up.
Okay.
um, Mine is back from our CIS days, um, and it's related to a water fountain. And I was a little ambivalent about telling this because it's not great in terms of how I'm how I come across, but this is raw, unfiltered Chris. So we had this water fountain by the media center, which was our library, which the front of it was like off, and there's like the condenser in there that cooled the water or whatever. And I remember like, look, I took a drink and then the condenser turned on and I saw like this fan that was stationary turn on, and then I like watched it and turned on and went so fast that like you couldn't even see it anymore. And then along comes our friend who took the shot of Papa John's garlic sauce, um, and I said, "Hey, put your hand in there." uh, and he did, and hit the fan. Like, ow! Uh, and uh, that was it. But I found it very funny at the time, and I don't know that it was funny, but it still makes me laugh. And I think like uh, there was some adventurousness to this person who I'm not naming here, that sort of lended itself to taking a shot of garlic sauce or putting your hand in a for some like why would you I don't why would you put your hand in a water fountain even if someone told you to.
Yeah.
Like, something is going on here, right? But yeah, some degree of adventurousness that I think contributed to some of those stories, and I appreciate that adventurousness in hindsight. So that's
Yeah.
that.
I feel like it's funny. I find adventurousness to be a very nice euphemism. I would have said like disinhibition myself.
Yeah, well, to each their own, right? Uh, Suum cuique to go Latin.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a that no one. We're gonna get. We should make that a little clip because no one's gonna like that, right? Chris could start speaking Latin. What a
I
jackass.
I remember too, like I feel like even more so than just anybody. I feel like in when you were in like junior high and high school, specifically if you told someone to do something without any like I would have been very
Yeah,
suspicious if you were just like,
not
hey,
a
do
good idea.
this. I would have been like, why? What happened? What's going
Yeah,
on?
yeah, I think that's right. Especially given the, yeah, like put the fork in people's pockets or whatever. Yeah, like that's, yeah, not, I was not a trustworthy character.
Well, I mean, part of it honestly was that it felt like in these situations you were like operating on a slightly different level. Like you had thought of something that I hadn't thought of yet. And so I was trying to get on like what am I missing? Like what's and I felt like that happened frequently, especially in like in quick discussion or in situations like that. Like I feel like you would think of something and you would start talking assuming that thing, and I would just be like, wait, what am I missing here? And so whenever you're just like, hey, do this or hey, do that, it's like, what is Chris thinking about? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good, yeah. If I ever give you a suggestion or a command, you should, well, obviously you should question it, but you should question like, what is Chris's motivation in giving this to me? Hopefully that's less true nowadays, but it definitely was at that time. All right, well, I have to run to the vet to pick up my dog, so I'll probably have to end it here. um, do you? So I'll be traveling for the next 2 weeks. Um, Probably will not be able to do this, but I imagine if anything crazy happens, we'll have stuff to talk about when I get back.
We will, and I will try to put out some kind of video. I don't know if maybe Lonnie will make an appearance, or maybe I'll
Oh
just
yeah,
talk to the void. I'll do something to create some content. I haven't decided on what yet, so that'll be a surprise for next week.
yeah. And Lonnie, by the way, I mean I texted him, but I just want to publicly thank him for coming on. It was awesome, and he's such a good podcast voice. I feel like he should be on more. That was fun.
Maybe we'll
So
just
thanks for coming, Lonnie.
hijack it and talk about baseball or something. The possibilities are endless. This might be a completely different podcast next week. We don't know.
By the
We'll
time
just
I
take a
get back, I'll
deviation.
have to learn an entirely new sport, essentially. Yeah,
All right.
I look forward to it.
Until
Okay,
next time.
I'll see you.